Assassin's Creed has been one of the most popular game franchises for the past years, with Ubisoft's well-executed approach of making accessible open-world games set in different time areas where gamers can play a role in multiple important events throughout our history. It was hard for it not to become a big success. With millions of people over the world buying its new installments every single year, it is by many called to be the true example of the best action-adventure series. But even with all that praise, is that a title it truly deserves? This is looking back at Assassin's Creed. When Ubisoft released the first few details about their at the time called Project Assassins, it immediately got attention from all over the world. Made by some of the creators behind Prince of Persia, it showed a game taking place in some sort of medieval setting and a man with a blade attempting to assassinate another human. As time progressed, we started to learn more and more. Ubisoft's new franchise, Assassin's Creed, was planned to be a trilogy, with 3 different main characters in different time periods playing their part in the story of the Templars versus the Assassins. With the first entry featuring Altair, an assassin during the Third Crusade, the tone for what the series would be known for was immediately set. When the first game came out in 2007, the star of the game was immediately recognized: the world. Jerusalem in the 1100s was created with such level of detail that you immediately felt like you were actually walking around in it. With hours of gameplay and a good story combined, players were sucked into the experience. Still, the main criticism for the game was repetitiveness. Though the stealthy gameplay was innovative overall, what you were doing was always the same. There were 9 people in total to assassinate, and to get there, players had to run, pickpocket, interrogate and eavesdrop their way through. This didn't change at any moment, generally making people feel bored at a certain point. It also turned out Altair wasn't the only character you played in AC1. Desmond, a modern day assassin, was saddled with the task of entering the Animus to ultimately find out about his ancestors' lives. These parts especially felt tacked on, and it made people wonder why it was chosen to connect the story overall with modern day events. It felt like the games could have done just great without it, and the real explanation for playing in a certain time period wouldn't be needed. Still, the first Assassin's Creed was an innovative game overall, introducing people to a whole new level of immersiveness. With some of the mistakes usually made in first entries, it only made people wonder what the next part would be able to do. And 2 years later, the wait was over. Assassin's Creed 2 came out in the year of 2009 and generally tried to improve on every aspect of the first game. First of all, a new assassin was being introduced. Ezio Auditore, a young assassin during the Italian Renaissance, loses his father and brother and seeks for revenge in a story that will lead him through several enormous Italian cities. Once again, the game was being praised for its accurate representation of Italy during their respective time period. From the beautiful world consisting of loads of different citizens, the recreation of popular landmarks Italy is known for, and the amazing soundtrack that totally suited it, it once again felt like you were actually walking around in the same period. As a counter to the criticism of repetitiveness in the first game, Ubisoft Montreal introduced a lot more open world elements we all know from games like Grand Theft Auto. Overall, there were mixed feelings about this. Some people simply liked it and some people did not. All of a sudden Ezio was busy delivering packages to different people, beating up harassing men and finding feathers on rooftops. Again, overall it resolved this problem of repetitiveness, but it did feel a bit out of place. Where the goal of the first game was really simple all the time and allowed you to fix your mistakes of getting caught by winning a good sword fight, now the game forced you to not get caught, and a simple trial and error system prevented you from fixing your mistake in any way. These few criticisms brought the game down a bit, but were once again made up by a fantastic story, world, characters and overall feeling that I don't think many people bothered. A new milestone had been reached for open world games, and AC2 unexpectedly sold over 9 million copies. With the plot revolving around 2012 and the final game in the trilogy to be up next, looking to come out in that year, many people could not wait to see what the third game would bring. But that's the point where Ubisoft decided to take a drastic turn with the franchise. It took only a few months for Ubisoft to announce Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. Ezio's character was received so well that they felt like they wanted to do more with him. His story wasn't done yet and many people demanded more from him as well. To me personally, this announcement came as a disappointment. I was afraid Brotherhood wouldn't be able to innovate much and feel more like an Assassin's Creed 2.5. Still, I was willing to give it a chance, but my fears unfortunately became reality. Even though Brotherhood introduced the city of Rome, it was of a much smaller size than the cities in AC2 combined. The all-new Brotherhood system was a simple yet good addition, but wasn't the huge innovation I and many others were looking for in a new entry. And then there was the multiplayer. Sure, it was worked out well and the core group has always kept playing and enjoying it, but I personally got bored of it after only a few matches already, and it never managed to keep me and lots of others playing. There's no denying Brotherhood was a great game and featured many of the great elements the previous games had been praised for, but I felt like I had already played it. I personally felt willing to wait those 3 years in the first place and get amazed again, but this feeling was taken away from me a bit. I was willing to accept it though and looked forward to the 2 remaining years, but after still selling an amount of copies close to the second game, Ubisoft decided to continue the trend. Assassin's Creed Revelations was announced in 2011. It seemed that all of a sudden the original naming of a trilogy was abandoned and that instead this one was now called to be the end of Ezio's trilogy. But Altair also made a return and it was up to the player to fully finish the stories of both characters. I can't stress out enough that both Brotherhood and Revelations are still great games, but with this big transformation of the series and the multiple handheld, mobile and even Facebook games to come out in such a short period of time, I won't lie and say that I lost some respect for Ubisoft for going down that path. Nonetheless, there was still a bright spot down the road, one last chance for the series to reclaim itself. 2012 was here, and finally, the game I had been waiting for since all the way back in 2009 got announced. Assassin's Creed 3 was announced in early 2012 and showed us what Ubisoft had in mind to finally end the trilogy. AC3 would unexpectedly feature a brand new assassin in a new time period. This time it was Connor's turn, a Native American during the time of the American Revolution. Dan was at E3 and multiple other events showing off some of the new elements like sea battles caused anticipation to go through the roof. AC3 had a lot to live up to, and with many people sharing the same thoughts as I did of finally getting to play the sequel we had waited for and that had been worked on since the second game came out, I couldn't wait to get my hands on it. When the game came out in October of 2012, I was happy to see that change in setting. The game had a much different feeling to it. At times it could feel extremely tense but peaceful at others. Connor had all new moves available and the game introduced these new features I'd been looking for all the time, such as the before shown sea battles, which could feel very satisfying, and a fun tree climbing system. But as we had seen with all entries before, the game came with its bad points too. First of all, literally the first half of all chapters felt like a tutorial. It took several hours before you actually got to play as the Connor we had seen in all the trailers and footage. The cities of Boston and New York overall felt quite bland and dull, where in previous games the world used to be one of the bigger pluses. And finally, the tree climbing system I mentioned before to be fun, did that actually have much use? The biggest problem though in my eyes came with the gameplay, which was essentially still the same as it had been since the second game, and with all these sub-entries, the fear I had for it not feeling fresh anymore seemed to be justified. With Ubisoft stating Desmond's trilogy would finally come to an end, which unexpectedly turned out to be a very open one, I felt disappointed in what the series had become. Assassin's Creed 3 sold over 12 million copies, but received a Metacritic rating of only 80 out of 100, which didn't come close to what AC2 achieved. What started out to be one of the most promising, innovative and beautiful franchises changed into a series that's used to quite frankly keep the company in a very healthy financial position. With Assassin's Creed 4 already being announced merely several months after the release of the third one, I see more and more people starting to suffer from series fatigue and, like me, wishing this path had never been taken. My request to Ubisoft would be to please give the series a break, wait 3 more years and think about what can truly innovate and change up the series for the greater good. I still feel love for the franchise deep down inside, but with all the recent directions, this feeling is sinking deeper and deeper. I have full confidence that Assassin's Creed 4 will be an amazing game, but at the same time I can already predict it'll be AC2 in a different setting. That's what all 3 previous games were, and this one isn't looking to change that. I hope one day Ubisoft will realize this and will start to take actions, because if that doesn't happen, they may just assassinate that biggest franchise themselves. Thanks a lot for watching.